As we begin the service, I would ask if anybody might have a cell phone or any other noise-making device, please turn them off at this time. Although only Rabbi Conover's name appears on our service folder, my apologies to the clergy. Officiating the service today will be Rabbi Shoshana Conover, Rabbi Scott Gelman, Cantor Shira Ben David, and Rabbi Rena Singer. And Rabbi Conover will begin the service assisting the family in the ancient tradition of Kriya. If I could ask the family members wearing ribbons to please stand together at this time.
I remember when I first met Babette. I remember it was during the high holidays. And of course, when she came in, people parted. There she was, the matriarch of our community, always with perfect hair, perfectly coiffed, and with this huge smile, ready to meet at that time a new rabbi. And for me, knowing Babette helped me feel a sense of Temple Sholom's history. Her parents literally helped to build this building. But the thing about Babette is that she wasn't so much caught up in her history as much as she loved her future. And specifically, the future sitting right here with her grandchildren. She knew with every breath that she was going to take advantage of life, that she was going to show how to be thoughtful in each moment of her life. What did other people around her need? What could make them smile? What could give them a little joy and maybe a little chocolate cake? She cared about us because she knew what it was to have such a loving family that she grew up in. So she modeled that with her own family. And her greatest joy was to see that love modeled in her family with her children and her grandchildren. So I have to say to all of you, my heart breaks with you. Babette had so much life throughout her 104 years. Alan, your care from afar, making sure to manage every bit of her medical issues, you saved her life multiple times in these last 10 years. And we are so grateful to you for that. All of you really show us the very best of Babette. And so today, as our hearts break with yours, we're also so grateful for her life and the way in which she inspired each and every one of us. So we'll begin today with the 23rd Psalm. In that way, what we're doing is showing that even as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we are not alone. We not only walk with God, we walk with each other to be able to treasure and savor these memories of Babette.
Adonai roi lo achsar, ino tesher yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenaleini. Nafshi yeshovev, yeshovev, yancheni v'maglei tzedek, l'man shmo, gam ki elech v'gei tzalmavet, lo ira, ki ata imadi, shivtecha mishamtecha, hema yinachamuni, shivtecha leman cheni yinachamuni. Taroch lefanai, shulchan neged sorerai, tishanti vashemen roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdafuni, kol yamei echayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai li'orech yamim. Adonai roi lo echsar, Adonai roi lo echsar.
We just heard those words of the 23rd Psalm. The moment we will recite them, that most famous portion of the most famous Psalm, which reminds us to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, not to run, not to avoid it, but sit in it, appreciating the life that we are here to appreciate, that force that was Babette, that force in her own way. As we will read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen.
Epitaph by Merritt Malloy. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. If you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live on in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away.
This is a significant time of year for us to gather to remember Babette. We are in this time that's called Shivat de Nechemta, these Shabbatot that are coming up, these Sabbaths that come between the time in which we mark the rupture, the breaking of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. And what we do from that point on is that we count the weeks until we get to the High Holy Days. So we mark this time in this way of trying to find ways of comfort for our people, knowing that we have endured great loss. So of course, we who are here together today, we're experiencing this great loss, and we pray that today, by sharing stories and words of Babette, that really that will bring us some measure of comfort. So I know that we have wonderful family members who are going to be speaking today. Eleanor, I'm grateful that you will speak about your mom and share some special stories with us now. Thank you.
Geez, Mom, even the Blue Angels are flying for you. Last night, my Alan and I went to the funeral home, and I wanted to be sure that she looked nice. So we got there and they opened the casket for me to see. And I was so surprised because the last time I'd seen her wasn't so good. And I found back in her closet a pretty top, it's sparkly, and some new pants that still had the tags on them. She hadn't even worn them yet. And she wanted always to have her original wedding band. So I put that on her. And she always wore bracelets, put some bracelets on her, always had earrings, put her earrings on. And she looked so pretty. And I kept saying to Ellen, doesn't she look pretty? Doesn't she look pretty? She would have been so happy in how she looked. And then the second thing I thought about is she'd have been so mad at the earrings that I picked because they didn't match her outfit. They were earrings that she wore all the time, but they didn't go with the top. But anyway, she looked really pretty. Our mother, Babette Sylvia Weil Hyman, was born on April 14th, 1918. She was the middle daughter between Lorraine, the eldest, and Phyliss, the baby. They grew up on the north side where she remained most of her life. My mother never went to college. She had to go to work. She interviewed to be a flight attendant, or stewardess as they were called in those days, for TWA. She got the job actually, and just before going in for her uniform fitting, she was told the position had been filled. She's always believed that it was because they found out that she was Jewish. So my mother went to work for the Army at the Conrad Hilton Hotel as a dental assistant. When the war was over, she went to work as a dental assistant for a dear family friend. She was fixed up with our dad on a blind date. They had been dating a while when my grandparents and mother moved to the south side. She figured my dad wouldn't want to drive there, so she told him that perhaps he would want to see someone else. He got the hint. One day, her mother, Kate, ran into my father downtown. He inquired about how Babette was doing, and she said, if you want to know, why don't you call her? They were married March 26, 1950. My brothers, Al and Larry, were born February 1951, and I followed 3 years later. My parents' first apartment was on Fullerton, is the same building as her parents, but different wings. They lived in a one-bedroom with twin babies and a rollaway bed. They finally moved to Stratford when I was 18 months old and remained there until 2006. My parents waited a long time for the three of us to get married. Alan and I kicked it off in 1987, followed right behind by Larry and Susan, and a few years later, Alan and Susan. But our greatest joy began in September 1989 through December 1994. 6 grandkids in 5 years. Someone was either pregnant or having a baby. A high chair was a permanent fixture in her dining room for years. More than anything, our mother loved being a grandmother. That was her greatest joy. She used to tell them that her house was a safe haven from their parents. If someone told you that you were wonderful and everything you did was great, you'd want to live with them too. No rules, and I mean no rules, were applied to these kids. Popsicles on new carpeting, no problem. Walking on the sacred velvet bench in the dining room with shoes on, who cared? And as the years went on, anything these 6 did was okay. They were just expressing themselves, and she was their biggest champion. She wanted to know everything about their lives. She was there to listen and give advice. But most of all, she wanted to be up to date on their love lives. Last week, Kate FaceTimed me with her so I could talk to my mother. She was coming in and out like a light bulb that's flickering on and off, my brother Alan says. But at the very end of the conversation, and clearly bored with me, she turned to Kate with her eyes closed and asked, "Are you dating anyone? What's his name? What does he do? And how did you meet him?" And after Kate answered each question patiently, my mother was satisfied and she fell back asleep. The flicker was out. For living so far away, we saw a lot of my parents. They would come out to California often and we would come here. My mother was way ahead of her time when she bought a picture phone so that we could see each other. It was grainy and we looked like we were on Mars, but it did the trick. Alan, Kate, and I went to Las Vegas to celebrate their 50th. She wanted to go to the little white chapel where the girls were bridesmaids and they were married by a minister. My mother didn't sleep much. You could call it midnight or 6 in the morning. She loved a good greasy spoon restaurant, a very burnt hot dog, and a glass of champagne. She was never without a bracelet, rings, earrings, a scarf, or a fine linen handkerchief. And of course, a spritz of perfume. She had a dog growing up, Tootsie, whom she loved dearly. And although we never had a dog growing up, each one of us did later. She loved them all and they loved her. From Kate's little Ollie, who would jump across a room to protect her if you came near her, to Alan's German Shepherd Odin, who would eat you, but he would just lay at her feet. She was the family historian. If anyone had a question, her sisters would say, "Ask Babette." She kept every note, card, or picture sent to her. She put Google to shame. She could track down anything you were looking for. She had no problem calling main offices to find something. I used to tell her she should work for the FBI. My mother did not live an extraordinary life, but she lived a good life. My parents were able to travel and were together 56 years. She saw her grandkids grow to adults. She saw so much change in this world. In the end, my mother had much to be proud of. She had done her job and done it well. Today was a long time coming. My mother was ready to go. She waited until Alan and I came from LA, Emma from New York, and Alan and Susan from Wyoming. She was a mother and grandmother to the very end. She wanted her family around her. She was gone 5 hours later. She's finally at peace. Obviously, my mother and I had a lot of time to talk about what she wanted to be said today. So these are the 3 things that she wanted me to read. How you spend your dash. I read of a man who stood to speak at a funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on his tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came his date of birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between the years. For that dash represents all the time that he spent alive on earth. And now only those who love him know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters most is how we live and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard, and there are things you'd like to change, for you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger, and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy's being read, with your life's action to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spend your dash? This was a Mother's Day card I sent to her in 1999. My mother kept a garden of the heart. She planted all the good things that gave my life a start. She turned me to the sunshine and encouraged me to dream, fostering and nurturing the seeds of self-esteem. And when the winds and rains came, she protected me enough, but not too much she knew I'd need to stand up strong and tough. Her constant good example always taught me right from wrong, markers for my pathway that will last a lifetime long. I am my mother's garden, I am her legacy, and I hope today she feels the love reflected back from me. Finally, do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there, I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow, I am the diamond glints on snow. I am sunshine and ripened grain, I am the gentle autumn's rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft star that shines at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am that there, I did not die.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. And I think that she just was so proud of the way that you and Alan raised your daughters, Kate and Emma. So Alan, I don't know if you did want to share a few words today. So please come on up, and then I know that Emma is going to follow after you.
In November of 1986, I had an opportunity to first meet Babette as I was invited to come to meet Eleanor. As we met in Los Angeles at a wedding, a couple that I set up on a blind date. And at that wedding, Eleanor and I met. I came out here to follow this person, Eleanor, that I was truly attracted to, and had an opportunity with my first visit in Chicago to meet the Hyman family. And at that time, Babette embraced me, and for 35 years, which is our anniversary coming November, she's done the same for us, our family, and for the entire Hyman family. She was really the role model for me to really understand how to raise a family. When I came to Chicago, I always ran these long distances, and she would always say, "That's a long way to go." And I always say, you know what, it's the journey. I love it. I love these long runs. Well, my run was minor compared to 104 years of a marathon. She ran a marathon with great style, always spinning plates through those 104 years. Our family, Larry's family, Alan's family, always worried about it. And those plates were always spinning. Sometimes they would wobble and she would stabilize it. She was fantastic. And so today I really want to honor her for this incredible journey that she had with great style, great aplomb. And at the end of a marathon, it's always a tradition to have a glass of beer and a pizza. And today I'm going to have that beer and pizza honoring Babette for this incredible run that she had, showing us how to do it with the greatest style, with always a smile and with always love.
Grandma was a lover of funky bracelets and colorful silk scarves, listening to Frank Sinatra crooning in the background, evenings spent at the Drake, and afternoons sipping Bloody Marys with her two sisters. She also loved this city, and in her eyes, Chicago's all-time greatest home team, her Cubbies. She was also the lover, in the more provocative sense of the word, of her late husband of more than a half century, our dear Papa Sam. And boy, did she love reminiscing on that. In fact, I distinctly remember on a trip with her, I must have been about 11, and her saying if Papa were there, well, they'd never leave the hotel room. Besides their shared passion, Papa and Grandma shared a love of traveling and fine dining. Together, they created a home centered around their family and rooted by Judaism, a home all us grandkids relished in visiting. It was as if 606 was ripped from the pages of a children's book, an entire playground disguised as a historic brownstone. There was a slide in the middle of the downstairs dining room and laundry carts in the basement you could ride in. There's even a yellow swing off the kitchen porch. But most treasured of all was our grandma just inside, bent over her butcher block baking. It didn't matter if a dozen brownies were already in the freezer and a tin of crispy crunchies sat on the dining table with a chocolate flowers cake or a 1, 2, 3, 4 tucked away on its stand. There she was, apron tied around her waist, listening for the roar from Wrigley Field over the steady beat of her mixmaster. For Grandma, it wasn't just her therapy, her moving meditation. It was how she showed us her love. Best of all was to see how much my family enjoyed it and look forward to something I was baking, she told me ahead of her 100th birthday. The rewards were in watching people eat. What do I do for just one more taste of something made by her? Another slice. But I think we all feel that way right now, wishing we could share just one more good day with her, one more bite. Our grandma, she was a lover of long phone calls and late nights. But above all else, Grandma was a lover of those dearest to her one true joy, all of us, her family. And forever we will love her, our sweet grandma, finally at peace.
And Kate, I know that you wrote such a beautiful letter to your grandmother that she could appreciate when she was living. And I know that it'll be forever with her. So thank you. And Alan, I know that you're going to speak for your whole family. So, so you'll be speaking not only for yourself, but also for your beloved wife, Susan, for your children, Scott, who's here, Eddie, who's here from afar, Eddie, who had a 32-hour round trip in the car to spend some last moments with Babette. So truly, Alan, thank you for your entire family, how you cherish your mother. And I invite you to come and say some words, please.
I had to look up the word to eulogize, which surprisingly means to praise. It comes from the Greek roots. Eu means good, and logos means speech. And if anyone deserves praise, it's certainly my mom. I'd also like to take this moment to thank everyone here who took the time their busy schedules to come and do the last thanks to my mom. I know she'd be honored and thrilled to see everybody. I have to make a confession. Oh, that's my mea culpa. This has been a very difficult personally for me to put pen to paper. It is a time where there's a balance of rational thinking versus emotion. And there's plenty of reasons to understand why mom is no longer with us. However, this moment for me has been overwhelmingly emotional. Why? I'm not sure. I have some ideas, but the tears are for love. The tears are for thanks. The tears are for appreciation, for gratitude, and for respect. What I'd like to discuss today is not what she did with her life, but how she lived her life. The word that comes to me is selfless. She gave so much of herself for others without ever expecting anything in return. I called her the enabler. She made people feel great, and she wanted to see people do well. She used to use the quote. She had plenty of quotes, but the one that I think is appropriate is she said, "Behind every great man is a woman." And it's true. Ask my dad. And as for me, I would say absolutely. She gave us a great home. She was a great mother. And, you know, we were all part of her, both physically and physiologically, conceived and loved, and 9 months of complete and unselfish support, followed by years of caring and concern. How can one really ever pay that back? I don't know. In going through things, my mom was a great saver, especially cards. I too found a Mother's Day card that I had sent to her years ago. And it was entitled, "As Children Grow Older." And it reads, "As children grow older and time slips away, they seldom express what their hearts would say. But today I am hoping you're somehow aware of how much you meant to me, how much I care. And that's why I'm wishing that this day will be as happy as you've made so many for me." Thanks, Mom, for all the great memories. I love you. We all love you. And you will be missed.
When I met Babette, I met her with her adoring son, Larry, by her side, her amazing daughter-in-law, Susan, with her, and her grandchildren, Justin and Shelby. I think that the way in which you made sure to be close by and take such not only good care of your mom, but also the ways in which you all cherished her meant so very much to her. So Larry, I'll invite you to come up now. We'll see whether you're followed by Susan or if we'll share what Susan wrote later. Oh, you're perfect. And then Justin will invite you to come up. Shelby, you'll add the coda at the end, and I'll come in before you start to sing. Larry, would you?
Well, I must say, I didn't know my siblings had that in them. That was really good for both of them. Really, I'm telling you. And just on a sort of a footnote, what is Alan and Eleanor met at the wedding of what my mom's second best friend, who she grew up at Temple Sholem at Sunday school, Louise Rhodes. So that was something that it's the 6 degrees of separation, as they say. As my mom would say, what a beautiful day for a few. But I first would like to thank Rabbi Conover and the clergy, who I have really not met before, our cantor, Temple Sholem as a congregation, for letting us use this beautiful sanctuary. It has, excuse me, it has been, as my mother was fond of saying, incidentally, an important part of the family's life, so that our mom, our grandmother, our Aunt Babette, start her next journey from here. I got a wonderful text from a good friend of mine who's a physician down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I had talked to him about what was going on. So he sent this text that said, the body passes, the body passes, the soul goes on, and memories live forever. Then he said, in my world, death is a time not to mourn. Once you cut the body loose, rejoice the soul being set free of the burden of earthly existence. He then added, parenthetically, mourn until burial and then party like 1999. While these are tough emotional times for my family members, our friends, acquaintances of my mom, she touched many lives in both big and little ways. She had what we would call Babette-isms. One that I think I contributed to, or maybe Alan as well, when we were at Northwestern, there was a professor who we would sit in these classes with, and Dr. Evans would say, because no one would ever show up, he would say, those who honor me, do me a favor. Those who honor me, those who come to see me, honor me. Those who stay away, do me a favor. So it is much appreciated that everybody has come today. I also want to give a special thanks, and I hope she's watching, to my cousin Randy, who is in Melbourne, Australia. She would speak in the last several years, speak to my mom literally every day. And exactly at 5 o'clock, So if you called Babette, she would say, I can't talk. Randy's calling. On the dot, she would say. And it kept her going while these last years, to the point that even Randy sent her an iPad to make sure that she had that conversation. So Randy, if you're listening, thank you. She also, let me just say, as we spoke yesterday with the rabbi, from our grandmother Kate's side, and my grandparents, Kate and Victor Weil, their names are in the cornerstone of this building, had great significance to us. And that's why we asked if we could use the sanctuary for that purpose. And from my grandmother Kate, she was from the Kaufmans, were her maiden name. And they're the Kaufmans of Burlington, Wisconsin. And that's where we know the longevity came from. The Kaufmans had 10 kids, our great-grandparents, 5 men, 5 women. And of course, the men only lived at best into their early 80s. But the women, they were incredibly strong, smart, and resilient. Whatever they had in the DNA helix, it took them into their 90s and beyond. There was Aunt Rose. She lived in California, 96. Our own grandmother, Kate, she died on her 94th birthday. But the toughest was Aunt Bess of Milwaukee. She lived to 107 and a half. And even when she would come to Chicago after her brother Sam passed away, and they always came for our holidays, she would take the Greyhound bus down when the station was still at Randolph and Clark Street, carrying the tins of gefilte fish for the Passover Seder. So we finally said, that's it, we'll pick you up. But Bess lived by herself. She volunteered at 100 years of age to the old people's home, and no one knew she was 100. She never looked it. But at 105, she fell and broke her hip. And they brought her down, and my brother Alan did it, repaired it, and then she lived for 2 more years. We celebrated her 106th birthday, her 107th birthday over at St. Joseph's. The nuns were great. If you could pay, you could stay. And she stayed over at on the long-term care floor. And as I told my cousin Ted, I still remember and his 3 kids, 2 were fighting with swords, and his daughter Kate, who came in to honor Babette today, she was doing somersaults. And there we were celebrating 107 years. The purpose that I tell you that is because when she passed away, my dad who was a physician as well, gave a pithy response to what happened. And he said, she wore out. He said, the body just isn't made to go that long. And he said, she had no stress, no husband and no kids. So how can you go wrong, right? So we always talked about the best helix, the best DNA. Who would inherit that gene? And that was my mom. As Alan used to say, there's nothing wrong with her. She had no diseases. All she had was old age, in which she wore out. And this is the way she wanted it to be. But in the time of her 104 years, she did so much. She saw so much. And she left an impression on so many. That was the way she wanted it. And I hope Ari Jadwin, our cousin who's living in China, I hope he's on, because as I say, she saw so much. She was born almost at the end of World War I. She saw World War II, saw the Vietnam War. She saw the man walk on the moon. I remember being in her house. And she had the chance to watch Ari's marriage in Israel on Zoom. And of course, there was the always from the Jadwins, is Aunt Babette going to bake us her chocolate cake for her birthday? As we sat with Rabbi Conover the other day, I admitted to her, sort of like in a confessional, that over the many years in the high holiday services, the Hymans would sit about 7-8 rows back. And those who haven't been here, this bima actually moves on railroad tracks into the community center and opens up. And you could, as we got to the sermons, always see, if you look down the row where the Hymans were, everyone was nodding and sleeping. And I always used to, when my wife first met and we came here, she was aghast. She was like, what, everybody's sleeping? It's the sermon. And I think I may have said, well, they think they pump in sermon air so people can stay around. But one of the special things my mom liked was always the memorial service. For that was a day of atonement, Yom Kippur. Just as the sun is setting, the service is ending, and I was last here with her. Sue and I were last here with her and Justin, 2019. And she loved listening to the readings and the prayers of that memorial service. And I actually found in her possession the old Union prayer book that we used to use. This is all it was. It was written in 1945, but she had a passage that she loved, and I thought it would be, if I can get through it, and I told the rabbi, if I can't, you're more than welcome to finish. But it was at the memorial service for the Day of Atonement, which she loved this particular passage or reading. It was actually read by the rabbis. And it says, the eye is never satisfied with seeing. Endless are the desires of the heart. No mortal has ever had enough of riches, honor, and wisdom when death ended his career. Man devises new schemes on the grave of 1,000 disappointed hopes. Discontent abides in the palace and in the hut, ranking alike in the breast of the prince and the pauper. Death finally terminates the combat, and grief and joy, success and failure are all ended. Like a child falling asleep over his toys, man loosens his grip on earthly possessions only when death overtakes him. The master and servant, the rich and the poor, the strong and the feeble, the wise and the simple, all are equal in death. The grave levels all distinction and makes the whole world kin. And this was a spiritual reading that meant a lot to her. And then just before that, there was another passage on the page before, and just a small part of that lengthy reading. For man is feeble and perishable. His best laid plans are subject to disappointment and failure. Scarcely ushered into life, he begins his pilgrimage to the sepulchre. Through trial and suffering, he hastens to the darkness of the grave. And I know that this will make it easier for Babette Sylvia Hyman to go to her maker. And I thank each and every one of you for coming and taking the time out to see us.
Boy, it's been a journey getting here, guys. It's been quite a journey to make it to this moment. Shelby asked me recently what kind of mother-in-law Babette was. I said the best kind, one who doesn't hover and is always there when you need her, except as a babysitter. She made that very clear from the very start. She wanted to just enjoy all the fringe benefits of her offspring's offspring, which she did with all of her heart and all of her soul, all of her days. She wanted to, I mentioned, she never hovered, but that was before she passed. Today, I feel her hovering. Where else would she be but with the people she loves the most? Yesterday, I envisioned her hovering and playing like a child, totally free. There was a bit of a smoky cloud layer, which I imagine was her FOMO about leaving this life and all of us. Other than that, I sensed her enjoying this newfound freedom from a body that had endured so much pain for so long. Babette was a strong, always styling, classy dame, as my father said and would describe her. She was a strong, powerful woman in all of our lives. But if you think she was powerful as a mere mortal, just wait. Sorry. I see her fully enjoying stirring things up and guiding us all in the most wonderful ways. Kate, you should be married in no time. As she hovered, I surmised these 5 simple nuggets in no particular order. 1, stop taking things so seriously. Focus on what really matters at the end. 2, set yourself free and find peace now. What are you waiting for? 3, be brave. Don't let fear stop you. 4, to live a good life, focus on what you love most. Let the rest go and you will be happy. 5, I will always be here for you. If there is one other thing I would add to this list, that's to never give up. She lived that way, and she inspired so many of us with her courage and strength to do just that. Her main focus in this world was about the well-being of others, particularly her family. Do you think that she would let a thing like that stop her? I don't think so. I will wrap with these words from one of my favorites. She wouldn't know her, but Joni Mitchell. Love is touching souls. Babette, I added that. You surely touched mine.
I haven't been able to read this without really breaking down so far, so just bear with me for a sec. Grandma wanted to be remembered in one word to sum it all up. Thoughtful. I've been thinking a lot about what that word means. What does it mean to be thoughtful? To me, being thoughtful is a way of carrying oneself. It is living life with intention, being present to the events in life as they happen. That's exactly what she did. For 104 plus years, our grandmother woke up every day with the intention of making the most of her time on this earth. Grandma was kind, loving, sassy, giving,
and thoughtful. She dedicated her life to those that mattered most, her family. She had a beautiful way of making each of us feel loved. Over the years, countless people have told me how amazing she was. At times, it was easy to take that amazingness for granted, but she truly was. I believe that amazingness came from her ability to make everyone feel loved. Her grandmother's touch. I will forever cherish my time on this earth with her and hope to continue to learn from the many years of wisdom she gave. I am sad she is no longer with us in the physical form and trust that her soul is free and happy, taking a front row seat with our grandfather, watching the rest. Watching the rest of our lives unfold. I love you, Grandma, and I miss you.
And you can hear with those broken voices how much we have these broken hearts that need healing. So I'll invite Shelby, her granddaughter, to sing to us the Misha Berach, our prayer for healing, as we pray for all of us and our broken hearts.
Hi, everyone. Wow, I think I sound exactly the way that I sounded when I sang the Misha Berach at Justin's bar mitzvah. So I was 8 years old, and I'm pretty sure I sound exactly the same. Before I attempt to sing, I just want to share a couple of thoughts, because obviously from everything shared today, she was just so special. A one-of-a-kind lady. And I was very lucky that she was also my friend and not just my grandma. I learned to really become the woman that I am becoming because of her. And my mother and my family and everyone that I'm surrounded by, I feel so much love in this room. And I'm very grateful for everyone for being here today. It means so much to her, and it means so much to our family. It is a blessing that it has been generations of our family here in this building and in this area, and that we get to be here today to honor her and them and life. That's what she would want. So,
Like the bar mitzvah, you got a cancer by your side again.
I did. I had the cancer by my side then,
I'm
and I
only
have
here for
one now.
loving moral support. Okay, you ready?
Mhm. Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor Habraha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach Imotenu Mekor Habraha Leavotenu Bless those in need of healing with refuah Shema. The renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
You don't need a cantor.
Oh, we got a little shaky there.
In just a moment, we're going to conclude our service today with El Malei Rachamim, praying that Babette's soul is bound up in eternal life with God. Before we do, I'm going to just share with you some of the Babette-isms that need to be shared today because she lived these dictums so beautifully with her life. She would say, it takes so little to mean so much to another person. She was constantly looking out for, did people in a doctor's office need some chocolate cake? Did somebody near her need a smile? Do those people who were doting on her care also need some care in return, just for her to check in with? She always thought of all of us. And she also would say, if you give a beggar a coat, make sure it has buttons on it. Right? Don't give people the stuff that you don't want. She never did that in her life. She gave us her best, always, in every way. She said that you don't know the pain of another person, and somebody who has a full stomach can't understand the person with an empty stomach. She was empathetic. She cared so much. And some of her Babette-isms were more honest, like, if you don't like my apples, don't shake my tree, or you'll look too thin. Or golden years are not golden. I'm going to say this from the Bima. That's bullshit. When she was in her 90s, her manicurist wanted to set her up with someone, and she said if he's in his 60s and he has Viagra, well, maybe. She knew what love was, and she wasn't going to settle because her husband gave her flowers every single Saturday. And with those flowers had a handwritten note. She knew what it was to be cherished because she had grandchildren who doted on her as much as she doted on them. Now, she was obsessed with expiration dates. Whenever someone would go shopping for her, she would say, make sure to look at the expiration date. Don't get me anything after the expiration date. And she was obsessed with expiration dates because she believed in fate. She believed what we say in the Unatana Tokef on Rosh Hashanah. She believed in those words when we said that on Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed, who will live and who will die. For her, she realized that any time her time could be up. So she lived in such a rich and full way. And that's why she hung on in these very last days until everyone was by her side. She didn't want to miss a moment with any of you. Emma, when you said that you would give anything for one more good moment with her, she would have given anything for that one more good moment with all of you. You gave her such a rich life. You cherished her. You loved her. And that's how she made it so long. It wasn't just the genes, Larry. It was all of you. She didn't want to leave you. And so she won't. As you said, Susan, she hovers among us. She always will. So now we better be on our best behavior. Babette's watching. We better be thoughtful like her. We better cherish every moment with our families, even if They talk over us sometimes, even if they're a little long-winded, even if there are times where they can be a little frustrating. Cherish family. That's what Babette wants. And make sure always that you understand your own histories and cherish those. Not everyone is so lucky like Babette that their families actually make a cornerstone within Judaism, that they make their life filled with family dinners. Not everybody came from a home like Babette. So it's not so easy for all of us to build homes like Babette did. But she would say, keep trying. Cherish those things in your past that you can and carry them forward because they are the substance and the meaning in life. So in Babette's honor, we live our lives. We pray for comfort. And we pray to be able to live lives that fill others with inspiration, the way that Babette's life fills ours. With that, I invite you, please, to rise for El Malei Rachamim.
El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. אם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים. את נשמת אלישבע בת אביגדור וקשת של הלכה לעולמה. ועל הרחמים יסתירה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים. ויצרור החיים את נשמתה, אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Babette Hyman, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
This concludes the service here in the sanctuary. The interment will take place immediately at the family's plots at Memorial Park Cemetery, 9700 Grosse Pointe Road in Skokie. The family will be receiving calls of condolence beginning at 4 p.m. today in the Lakeview room at 2626 North Lakeview Avenue here in Chicago. That information's on the inside portion of the funeral service folder for those of you in attendance. For those of you watching online, that information's on the website you are currently on. I also ask you, please take note, the family has asked that memorial contributions in Mrs. Hyman's name be made to this temple. That information's there as well. For those of you going in procession with the family, the procession will be forming on the south side of the temple on Stratford Drive. Please make sure you obtain an orange funeral safety sticker. We'd also ask that you please have your bright headlights and flashing hazard lights on at all times. For an additional measure of safety, our staff will be placing magnetic flags on the tops of the vehicles in the procession. As we drive in procession today, please drive as close as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you at all times. We want to avoid any large spaces or large gaps in the procession, particularly as we pass through the intersections. The following family members have been selected to act as pallbearers: Alan Gottlieb and the grandchildren, Kate, Justin, Scott, Shelby, and Emma. At this time, I would ask everyone to please rise as Mrs. Hyman and the clergy and the family are escorted from the sanctuary. And I would ask the pallbearers to please step forward.